Counter-Strike 2 is out. Actually, it's been out for a while, and it's basically the same game. Valve released 5 YouTube videos going over the changes, one of which is about matchmaking changes, and the 5th is just a 1-minute long release trailer. They basically spent 4 minutes explaining all the changes. So why did they update it at all? Is it just another game to show that Valve can't count to 3?
3 shall be the number thou shalt count, and the number of the counting shall be 3. 5 is right out.
My name's Joel, I make video games for a living, and on today's episode, we're going to talk about something called technical debt, while we dissect the changes Counter-Strike 2 has made compared to CSGO. We're going over a smoother game and development, when graphics and upgrades adversely affect the gaming experience, and designing for skill discrepancies. I haven't played a shooter in years. I think 2016 is the last time I played Counter-Strike, so this is not gonna go well.
I've never been much of a fighter. Apologies for what you're about to see.
The core Counter-Strike experience hasn't changed in decades. From source to go to now, it's always a 5v5 fight between terrorists and counter-terrorists. There's usually a bomb to defuse, though sometimes it's hostages to save. But the strategies are the same. Rush B, don't stop! Usually when a game comes out on a new engine, it's so that I can do things previous games couldn't while looking substantially better. And sure, Counter-Strike 2 looks a little better than CSGO, but not as much as you'd expect from an 11-year gap. Most maps have just gotten brighter and decluttered, which is actually really good in a competitive game. The clean aesthetic makes it easier to spot enemies and focus on gameplay without getting caught on stupid geometry. It also makes the game easier to run on a lot of hardware. Speaking of, CS2 has a feature I wish every game had. While you're adjusting your graphics settings, the game actually shows you what each one is doing. I think that's great, because I might know what anti-aliasing or the texture filtering modes are, but I don't expect most people to actually be able to describe them or what they do. So the visual assists are brilliant. So if the graphics haven't changed that much, is the new engine radically improving gameplay? Well, no. That's basically the same too. But the gameplay didn't need to change. Counter-Strike is the best tactical shooter, end of story. There have been a couple nice touches added. The radar now gives visual indicators for how loud you're being, and smoke grenades now use volumetric objects which prevent one-way smokes that plagued CSGO. And the new system allows smoke grenades to be blown away by explosives or shotgun blasts. But the best upgrade to Counter-Strike 2 is actually hidden. The source engine that CSGO was built on came out in 2004. It saw plenty of upgrades, just like CSGO did, but when you're working with an engine that old, it just wasn't designed to do what a lot of modern games need. There's a concept called technical debt. Just like real debt, you build up technical debt in order to get things you want faster, but eventually you have to pay it back. Game developers build up technical debt by building things quickly or having to build strange code to accommodate things their engine wasn't built to support. As you add things on top of this bad code or rework parts of it, it's easier to forget what every line does. Let's do an example. Imagine you're building a game in an engine that can't handle vehicles, but lucky you, it has a physics engine. So you strap 4 wheels onto a plank, and when your player stands on it, you glue them down and write some code that treats the plank like an extension of the player's body. That way the controls move the board. At first, it might work and you'll feel great. You've cheated vehicles into your game.
I'm gonna make it! I'm gonna make it! This is the greatest thrill of my life! I'm king of the world!
But a few months later, when you want to add in helicopters, you have to start doing more weird shit so that your game can handle moving up, down, and ignoring gravity. All because your vehicles don't have their own class. They're just extensions of the player. Well, at that point, developing new features will slow to a crawl until you fix your technical debt, because every new thing you build is going to cause a lot of bugs and crash the game.
Woohoo! Woohoo!
Jumping to Source 2 has reset the technical debt Valve accrued over the decade of development on CSGO. All of their forgotten and unused functions, gone. And anyone who's worked with the map editor knows how much easier Source 2 is to work with. So even though Valve have never been known to be a fast company when it comes to development, the engine update means that they should at least be able to work faster now.
See that, boy? Why aren't you making any business deals?
I'll do it this afternoon.
The worst thing I can say about Counter-Strike 2 is that it ruined my script multiple times and had to make me rewrite it. In the very first draft, I was going to complain about how the upgraded graphics were nice, but the visual tracers that the gun fired didn't actually line up with where the bullets were going. This used to happen because visually the bullets come out of your gun, but in reality Counter-Strike uses hit-scan weapons, which means when you fire your weapon, the system draws a straight line from your crosshair to the end of the map, and then decides what it hit after the fact. And that slight change in angle used to make the bullets miss, but Valve fixed that shortly after Counter-Strike 2 came out. Next, I was going to complain about how some of the console commands had been removed. In CSGO, you could just turn the tracers off, which was an issue for skilled players because the inaccurate tracers were distracting. For low-level players like me, it didn't matter because I'm going around shooting like this.
Harry! You're alive! And you're a horrible shot!
But not only did Valve fix the tracers, just to be safe, they added the ability to remove them again. There's still one console command that I used to use that hasn't come back yet, and that's the ability to play as a left-handed shooter. I still can't do that in CS2. But the way Valve is going, that'll probably make it into the game before this video comes out. But of course, the biggest thing everyone wanted to complain about when CS2 came out was how it was lacking content. Entire game modes had been removed compared to CSGO, like Arms Race, which is Counter-Strike's version of gun game. I love Arms Race because it's a great way to warm up, but I can't complain about that either because Valve brought it back in early February. Now, if you're one of the players that like Demolition or Danger Zone as game modes, those still aren't in the game as of me writing this, but I think Valve have proven that they're working on CS2, and the updates are coming out at a pretty decent pace for Valve speed. And while it's okay to be upset that those modes weren't included in CS2's launch, you have to remember that Valve had to rebuild everything from the ground up. There's a cost to switching engines, and they're paying back that technical debt by having to rebuild all of their old systems. So what would I do to improve CS2? Let's face it, this really isn't a new game. It's global offensive with polish. CS2 launched with an audience, a competitive scene, and everyone knows what they're getting. Even Steam doesn't know the difference between the two. It thinks I've played for over 900 hours. And while that's mostly a good thing, some of the design choices are showing their age. So most of the changes I would want to see are quality of life choices to improve the experience for us low-level scrubs who can't figure out how to use their utility properly.
Fork! We can't eat soup!
Let's start with something smaller. When playing Deathmatch, a more recent trend is to automatically reload the player's gun for them when they get a kill. Designers do this because Deathmatch is a fast-paced mode when you're constantly watching for threats from every direction. Reloading as a mechanic is about realism, sure, but it creates a moment of weakness for opponents to charge you. In Deathmatch, we don't need this weakness. A skilled player should be rewarded for killing an enemy without expending their whole magazine. Then there's Arms Race, which is a little too chaotic for my taste. The player count is slightly too high given the size of the maps. That doesn't just mean you die faster, it also leads to the lobbies getting populated with a lot of bots. Now for the big one. Tactical shooters as a genre have seen plenty of innovation since Counter-Strike started all the way back in 2000. I like the simplicity of Counter-Strike. I like that there are no unique powers. If you die, it's because you got outplayed, not because you're a Winston going against a Reaper. That being said, there are lessons Counter-Strike could take from some of its competitors. This one is going to be controversial, but Counter-Strike is a difficult game, to the point that lower ranks aren't even playing the same game as those at higher ranks. Learning to throw utility grenades requires entire tutorials.
And right in the middle of it, look at the middle of the gap here in between the two buildings, then move the crosshair up until it is the same height as the tippy-top points of the antenna. Then run forward and let go right as you hit the fence. It's a difficult nade to throw because it incorporates the movement.
Now, I'm not asking Counter-Strike to go full-on Valorant and let players orbital drop smokes like Brimstone does. But Valorant has made utility easier, so it's not as intimidating for newer players to use. Unlike in Counter-Strike, where low-level players tend to avoid grenades, and when they do use them, it looks like this. That leads to low-level players treating Counter-Strike like Call of Duty, charging in like idiots, guns blazing, making it harder to learn how to actually play the game, and getting destroyed by those who may be smurfing.
Let's put the guns away and go on about our business.
Freeze!
So, how would I fix this without ruining it for those who have thousands of hours of training? Well, I'd copy the grenade previews Valorant is using. Using the same tech Counter-Strike has to show the travel path of a grenade, anytime players pulled the pin of their grenade, I'd show a predictive path. What I like about this is it doesn't remove any of the knowledge experienced players have. You still need to know what you're doing to throw a complex smoke over walls, but at least now, novice players can visually line up smokes and contribute to the team, or at the very least, stop actively hindering them with bad grenades. So I know I joked around a lot about being shit at this game throughout the review. I'm definitely nowhere near where I was back in the day. My peak rank was Distinguished Master Guardian, which I think is respectable. But for the review, I rewatched some War Owl videos and learned my smokes. I got used to the movement again and was actually landing shots near the end of it. It was like coming out of retirement to see if I still had it. I was queuing up for each round going,
Fate whispers to the warrior, a storm is coming. And the warrior whispers back, I am the storm.
I bring this up because I know the first comment I'm gonna see is, get good, or if you can't throw smokes, you deserve to be low rank. And if that's your thought process, more power to you. I'm not gonna pretend to be amazing. But I do understand the fundamentals of the game, and my critiques aren't about my own personal experience. Working as a designer, you have to think about the wider player base, and I didn't want to gatekeep the fun of Counter-Strike. There's a lot of strategy in this game, and when designers can adjust mechanics to help the majority of their players without sacrificing the core audience, I think they should. Counter-Strike is the best tactical shooter on the market today, and I don't want to ruin it by dumbing it down. I just want to help low-level players learn the fundamentals. I know that's scary for some people. Gamers tend to be resistant to any kind of change, even if it's only perceived.
This new version is more like, it has more lag than the last version. What did you guys do? And we were like, we didn't touch anything. What the heck are you talking about?
Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. Subscribe, hit the buttons, and watch more videos. I've been Joel, this is GBU Reviews.
And I still have no closer.